You know that husband. The one who never raises his voice. The one who remembers that you take your coffee with exactly 1 splash of oat milk and 2 stevia packets and has it waiting on the nightstand before your alarm even thinks about ringing. The one who files the taxes in February. The one who holds your hair back when you have had too much tequila at the company Christmas party and never, ever brings it up the next morning. Yeah, I married that guy. And let me be the first to tell you. Sometimes perfection feels a lot like a noose. My name is Sienna. I am 28 years old. I work in high-end event planning, orchestrating the kind of parties where people spend more on flowers than most families spend on a car. And 5 years ago, I thought I knew what I wanted. I wanted stability. I wanted safety. I wanted Adrian. Adrian was 33 when everything fell apart. He wasn't a corporate shark or some tech genius. He was an art conservator. He spent his days in a climate-controlled studio at the City Museum, smelling like turpentine and old varnish, meticulously cleaning centuries of grime off paintings that were worth more than our entire existence. He was patient. He was quiet. He was steady. God, he was so steady, like a rock, or a statue, or a wall that I was slowly, methodically bashing my head against. The trouble started not with a fight, but with a Tuesday. Just a regular, boring Tuesday. I came home late, buzzing with the adrenaline of a crisis I had solved at work, involving a shortage of orchids and a very angry bride. I wanted to drink wine. I wanted to dance. I wanted to scream. And there was Adrian, sitting on the beige sofa, reading a biography of some dead painter. "Dinner is in the oven," he said, not looking up. "Keep it on low." That was it. No fire, no passion. Just dinner in the oven. I felt like I was suffocating. I felt like I was drowning in a sea of warm, comfortable oatmeal. I needed a spark. I needed a match. I needed to burn something down just to see if I could still feel the heat. That was when I met Jax. Jax was a walking disaster. He was 26, a drummer in a band that played in basements that smelled like stale beer and bad decisions. He had chipped nail polish and a tattoo on his neck that he refused to explain. He was everything Adrian wasn't. He was loud. He was messy. He was dangerous. We met at a dive bar where I had gone to escape the silence of my own house. He bought me a whiskey sour that tasted like gasoline. He looked at me like he wanted to devour me right there on the sticky bar stool. "You look like you're hiding from something," he said. His voice was scratchy, like sandpaper. "Maybe I am," I said. "Or maybe," he leaned in close, smelling of tobacco and sweat, "you're just looking for something worth finding." It was a cheesy line. It was pathetic, really. But it worked. Because for the first time in months, my heart wasn't beating a steady, reliable rhythm. It was racing. I didn't go home until 3 in the morning. I told Adrian my phone died. I told him I went for drinks with the girls. He just nodded, sleepily, and moved over to give me space in the bed. He didn't check my phone. He didn't smell the whiskey on my breath. He trusted me, and that trust felt like permission. For 3 months, I lived in 2 worlds. By day, and in the early evenings, I was Sienna the wife. I ate the dinners Adrian cooked. I asked him about his restoration project, nodding as he talked about pigment analysis and canvas tension. I played the part, but my mind was always elsewhere. Under the dinner table, my thumb would hover over my phone screen. Jax. Jax. "Miss you come over later?" Jax. "Wrote a song. Think it's about your eyes." Jax. "I need you. Now." It was intoxicating. The secrecy acted like a drug. Every time I lied to Adrian, every time I said I had a late client meeting or an event walkthrough and got away with it, I felt powerful. I felt smarter than him. I felt like I was the main character in a movie, and he was just the extra holding the boom mic. I convinced myself I wasn't hurting him. He was happy, wasn't he? He had his paintings. He had his routine. He didn't suspect a thing. I told myself that Jax was just a phase, a way to blow off steam. I told myself that Adrian was too boring to understand my needs, that I was actually saving our marriage by getting my excitement elsewhere so I wouldn't resent him. See? I had it all figured out, or so I thought. The breaking point didn't happen in a dark alley. It happened under the crystal chandeliers of the National Gallery. It was the biggest night of Adrian's career. For 2 years, he had been leading the restoration of a Renaissance masterpiece. I can't even remember the artist's name now. Something Italian. Something old. But to Adrian, this was everything. He had barely slept for weeks leading up to the unveiling. He had bought a new tuxedo. He had practiced his speech in front of the bathroom mirror while I pretended to listen, texting Jax from the toilet. "You look beautiful, Sienna," Adrian said to me in the car on the way there. He reached over and took my hand. His palm was warm, dry. "Thank you for being here," he said. "I know this stuff isn't really your scene, but it means the world to me." I squeezed his hand back. "Of course," I said. "I wouldn't miss it. I meant it. Sort of." But then, my phone buzzed in my clutch. "Jax. Bad night. Band broke up. Kicking me out of the apartment. Need cash. Need you. Jax, if you don't come, I might do something stupid." My stomach dropped. Jax was volatile. That was part of the appeal. Until it wasn't. We arrived at the gallery. Champagne flutes clinked. Important people in velvet jackets shook Adrian's hand. He was glowing. I had never seen him look so proud. And now, the museum director announced, stepping up to the podium, "I would like to introduce the man whose patience and skill have brought this treasure back to life, Adrian." Adrian stepped up to the microphone. He adjusted his glasses. He looked out into the crowd. His eyes scanned the room, looking for one person. Me. But I wasn't looking at him. I was looking at my phone. "Jax. Seriously, Sienna. I'm at the bridge. Answer me." Panic, cold and sharp, pierced through me. This was drama. This was life and death. This was so much more important than some old painting that had been hanging on a wall for 500 years. I stood up. Right as Adrian opened his mouth to speak. Right as he began, "I would like to dedicate this work to." I turned my back on him. I walked out of the ballroom. My heels clicked loudly on the marble floor, echoing in the silent room. I pushed through the heavy double doors into the hallway. I dialed Jax. "What is going on?" I hissed into the phone. "I need $500, Jax slurred. "And I need a ride." "I am at a gala, Jax. I don't care about your stupid rich people party," he screamed. We argued for 10 minutes. It turned out he wasn't at a bridge. He was at a bar. He wasn't suicidal. He was just drunk and broke. Again. I hung up, furious, my hands shaking. I fixed my lipstick in the reflection of a glass display case. I took a deep breath. I walked back into the ballroom. The speech was over. The painting was unveiled. People were clapping politely. Adrian was standing by the painting, surrounded by donors. He looked diminished. His shoulders were slumped. The glow was gone. I plastered a smile on my face and walked over to him. I grabbed his arm, reclaiming my territory. "Sorry, darling," I said loud enough for the director to hear. "Work emergency, you know how it is. Clients don't sleep." Adrian looked at me. Really looked at me. It wasn't anger in his eyes. It wasn't sadness. It was something worse. It was clarity. "Did I miss the big moment?" I asked, laughing lightly, trying to diffuse the tension. "It's just a painting, right? It's not going anywhere. You can tell me the speech later in the car. I'm actually exhausted. Can we go?" The director looked at me with open shock. Adrian's colleagues shifted uncomfortably. I had just dismissed his life's work as just a painting in front of the people he respected most in the world. But I didn't care. I just wanted to get out of there. I wanted to go make sure Jax hadn't crashed his car. Adrian slowly pulled his arm away from my grip. "You go," he said. His voice was very quiet. "I have to stay for the reception." "Don't be silly," I said. We came together. "Go, Sienna," he said. He didn't look at me. He turned back to the painting. "Take the car. I'll get a cab." I stood there for a second, annoyed. "Fine. If he wanted to pout, let him pout." "Fine," I said. "Don't wait up." I left. I went to Jax. I gave him money. I slept on his dirty mattress that smelled like mildew. And I didn't think about Adrian until the next morning. That was the beginning of the silence. I expected a fight. When I came home the next day, wearing the same dress from the night before, hungover and smelling of smoke, I was ready for it. I had my excuses lined up. I felt sick. I helped a friend. "You're being controlling." But Adrian wasn't in the living room waiting to interrogate me. He wasn't in the kitchen. He had already gone to work. There was no coffee on the nightstand. No note. Just a perfectly made bed. I shrugged it off. "He's just sulking," I thought. "He'll get over it. He always does." But he didn't. That evening, he came home at 6 o'clock sharp. I was in the kitchen, pretending to look at a cookbook, waiting for him to ask me where I had been. He walked in. "Hey," I said, testing the waters. He walked past me. He didn't look at me. He went to the fridge, took out a pitcher of water, poured a glass, and drank it. Then he went to the guest bedroom and closed the door. I stood there, stunned. "Adrian?" I called out. Silence. I knocked on the door. "Adrian, are you serious? You're going to sleep in there?" No answer. The next morning, he was gone before I woke up. This went on for 3 days. Then a week. Then 2. He became a ghost in his own house. He stopped cooking dinner. He stopped doing the laundry. He stopped buying my oat milk. If we were in the same room, he looked through me like I was made of glass. If I asked him a direct question, he would answer with one word. Yes. No. Fine. It was maddening. It was worse than screaming. If he screamed, I could scream back. If he fought, I could manipulate him. I could cry. I could play the victim. I could twist his words until he was the one apologizing to me. But you cannot manipulate a brick wall. You cannot gaslight a vacuum. I tried to provoke him. One night, I sat on the counter while he was making a sandwich. "So, is this it?" I snapped. "The silent treatment?" "It's childish, Adrian. Truly childish." He continued spreading mustard on his bread. "I missed your little speech." "Boo-hoo. Get over it." He placed a slice of turkey on the bread. "I have needs, Adrian. Maybe if you weren't so obsessed with your dusty old paintings, you'd notice your wife is unhappy." He cut the sandwich in half. Diagonal. Perfectly symmetrical. He put it on a plate and walked out of the kitchen without a single glance in my direction. I screamed. I actually picked up a ceramic bowl and threw it at the wall. It shattered. Loud. Violent. I waited for him to run back in. To yell. To ask if I was okay. Nothing. I heard the faint sound of the television turning on in the guest room. He didn't care. And that terrified me more than anything else. I ran back to Jax. I needed reassurance. I needed to feel adored. But Jax was different too. Or maybe he was the same, and I was just finally seeing him without the filter of my own boredom. "Can I borrow your car?" was the first thing he said when I showed up at his place in tears. "My husband hates me," I sobbed. "That sucks, babe," Jax said, texting on his phone. "So, about the car? My gear is heavy. Is that all you care about?" He looked at me, annoyed. "Look, Sienna, don't bring your suburban drama here. I have a gig. Are you coming or not?" I looked around his apartment. The piles of dirty clothes. The empty pizza boxes. The smell of stale weed. Suddenly, it didn't look bohemian. It looked filthy. It looked exhausting. I missed my clean sheets. I missed the smell of lavender detergent. I missed dinner in the oven. I went home. It had been a month of silence. I couldn't take it anymore. I decided to play my final card. The truth. Well, a version of it. I figured if I confessed, if I showed him how broken I was, his savior complex would kick in. He would have to fix me. That's what he did. He fixed broken things. I waited for him in the living room. When he walked in, I was already crying. Perfect. Single tears running down my cheek. "Adrian," I choked out. "We need to talk." He stopped. He put his briefcase down. He looked at me. His face was unreadable. I made a mistake," I sobbed. "I felt so lonely. You were always working. And I met someone. It didn't mean anything. It was just, I needed attention, Adrian. I needed you." I waited for the explosion. I waited for the hurt. I waited for him to ask, who? Or when? Or how could you? Instead, he did something that froze the blood in my veins. He sighed. A long, tired sigh. Then, he reached into his briefcase. He pulled out a manila envelope and placed it on the coffee table. "I know," he said. His voice was calm. Conversational. "What?" I whispered. "I know," he repeated. "His name is Jax. He plays drums. You've given him roughly $4,000 of our savings over the last 3 months. You meet him at the Rusty Nail. You spent the night of my gala at his apartment on 4th Street. I stared at the envelope. My hands shook as I reached for it. I opened it. Photos. Me and Jax kissing in my car. Me walking into his apartment building. Screenshots. Screenshots of my texts. "How?" I gasped. "You're not careful, Sienna." Adrian said. You never have been. Because you don't think actions have consequences. Not for you. He walked over to the window and looked out at the street. I was waiting, he said softly. Waiting for what? For you to come back? He said. For you to realize what you were doing. I thought, maybe it was just a phase. Maybe I was working too much. He turned to face me. But then came the gala. He looked at me with an expression of profound pity. It wasn't that you left, Sienna. It was that you humiliated me to do it. You looked me in the eye, knowing how important that night was, and you spat on it. To go to him? I'm sorry, I screamed, falling to my knees. I'm so sorry, Adrian. I'll stop. I'll never see him again. Please. It doesn't matter, he said. It does. I love you. No, Adrian said. You love how I make you feel safe. You love that I clean up your messes. You love that I'm always there. He walked toward the door. Where are you going? I shrieked. I'm leaving, he said. The house is in my name. I bought it before we met. I've spoken to a lawyer. You have 3 days to move your things out. You can't do this. I can, he said. I really can. But what about us? 5 years, Adrian. You can't just throw away 5 years. He laughed then. A dry, humorless sound. I didn't throw them away, Sienna. You burned them. I'm just sweeping up the ash. He opened the door. I'm staying at a hotel. Don't be here when I get back on Friday. And then he left. He didn't slam the door. He just closed it. Click. The next few months were a blur of humiliation. I moved into a studio apartment that was half the size of my old closet. I called Jax. Hey. I left him, I said, trying to sound breezy. I'm free. Cool, Jax said. Hey, can you spot me $50? I hung up. I never called him again. I lost my job. It turns out you can't plan high-end events when you're having a nervous breakdown in the bathroom every 2 hours. My friends, our friends, chose sides. They chose Adrian. Of course they did. They knew. Everyone knew. I was the only one who thought I was being clever. It has been 8 months. 8 months of eating cereal for dinner. 8 months of checking my phone. Hoping for a text that never comes. I saw him yesterday. It was raining. A cold, gray drizzle that soaked into your bones. I was walking out of the pharmacy clutching a bag of cheap headache medicine. He was coming out of a theater across the street. He wasn't alone. She was tall. She had dark hair, pulled back in a simple bun. She wore a trench coat that looked expensive. She wasn't flashy. She wasn't exciting. She looked serene. Adrian was holding an umbrella over her head. He was leaning in, listening to something she was saying. He was laughing. Not the polite chuckle he used to give me when I told a mean joke. A real laugh. His eyes were crinkled at the corners. He looked younger. He looked lighter. He looked like a man who had put down a heavy burden he had been carrying for 5 years. My heart hammered in my chest. Impulse took over. I stepped off the curb. Adrian! I shouted. My voice cracked. He stopped. He looked across the street. He saw me. I stood there, wet hair plastered to my face, wearing sweatpants, holding my plastic bag. I waited. I waited for the anger. I waited for the hurt. I waited for anything. Maybe he would yell at me. Maybe he would look sad. If he looked sad, it meant he still cared. But he didn't look sad. His eyes slid over me. Briefly. Indifferently. Like I was a stranger. Like I was a piece of gum on the sidewalk. Like I was nothing. He didn't wave. He didn't frown. He just turned his head back to the woman beside him. He said something to her, and she smiled. He put his hand on the small of her back, a gesture he used to do for me. A gesture that used to annoy me because I thought it was possessive, but now realized was just protective, and guided her toward a waiting taxi. They got in. The door closed. The car drove away, and I was left standing in the rain. I finally understood the silence. It wasn't a punishment. It wasn't a game. It was simply the sound of a man who had nothing left to say. I had spent years screaming for attention, breaking things just to hear the crash. I wanted drama. I wanted a reaction. Well, I got one. I got the most devastating reaction of all. I became irrelevant. I stood there until I was shivering, watching the taillights of the taxi disappear into the gray city mist. I reached for my phone to call someone. Anyone. But as I scrolled through my contacts, I realized the only person who would have answered on the first ring was the man in that taxi. And he wasn't picking up ever again.